his feet.
When truth is treated as conditional, the Word of God remains unchanging. Stand in the Truth is the verse-by-verse teaching ministry of Calvary Chapel Corinth, walking through the Scriptures to understand what God has said and how it shapes our lives. Now, let's open our Bibles for today's study.
All right, we're going to be in Exodus chapter 25. Finally back to Exodus. And so my departure for the last, we departed, 3 weeks by choice. 1 week I wasn't here, was to really show that as we look at this tabernacle, right, this was God's way of doing two things. One, dwelling with man, the nation of Israel, right, his people. And two, it was the building of the process for remission of sins. So as we look at this is, you guys all understand this. You're well taught, previous to me, is that they had to do this process on a continual basis, and they would do this until the Lord would come and take the cross, right? So I wanted to depart into Romans chapter 7 and 8 because it looks at what would have happened if we weren't doing these sacrifices. And then as we look at this, we can remember what we don't have to do because the Lord Jesus already did all of this. So, Romans chapter 8, talking about God's love for us, that he came and he gave his life. So now back in Exodus 25, when we left off, God had reconfirmed and confirmed the covenant, and the people of Israel said, yeah, hey, we agree, we're going to do this, which we know they're going to go off and not do it nearly immediately. But Moses went up, he spent time with God, and God would give him the law, and Moses would come down and he would tell them all the law. And they would say, yeah, no, we're definitely in it. And so at the end of, at the beginning of 25, it says, then the Lord spoke to Moses. Now, actually, we'll jump back a few verses, because in verse 18 of chapter 24, it said, so Moses went into the midst of the cloud, he went up into the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. So he's spending time with God up there. And then it says, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, he's in the midst of this cloud, speak to the children of Israel that they bring me an offering. For everyone who gives it willingly with his heart, you shall take my offering. And this is the offering which you shall take from them: gold, silver, bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet thread, fine linen and goat's hair, ram skins dyed red, badger skins, and acacia wood, oil for the light, and the spices for the anointing oil, and for the sweet incense, onyx stones, and stones to be set in the ephod and the breastplate. And let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them, according to all that I show you, that is, the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furnishings, just so you shall make it. So we'll break down a little and we'll keep reading. But so while Moses is with God in this, up on the mountain in this cloud, I have no doubt he showed him some way of showing him a picture of how this tabernacle was going to look. Because it says he showed him the pattern, he showed him how it would be, but God's very detailed, very orderly, right? That's one of the things that makes this section and some of even Numbers so amazing, because God was so descript that he gave this, and then the people would go and build it. So he's speaking to them, and he says, you're going to speak to the children of Israel. And I call attention to this piece because he says that they bring me an offering. From everyone who gives it willingly with his heart, you shall take my offering. Nothing here is of the people of Israel's, right? Nothing we have is ours. It is all God's. So if God calls us to take something back, it's for us to give back. You think about like Abraham. He said, bring Isaac, your one and only, even though he had a second son, right? In his classification of children, it was his one and only son. He says, give him back to me. And sometimes we might be called to do that. As parents, we'll be called to let our kid go and let God work on them. Other times, God may call us to leave something, to depart from a lifestyle, to change something, to go live somewhere else. He might call us out to go to Africa or some other country. But in it all, we have to trust that God has a plan for it all because it's his already, right? If we've given our lives to him, our heart is his. He's put a new one in. It's his to own. It's his to say. So he says, you're going to go to the children of Israel and you're going to have them bring me an offering. But he says he wants it from a willingly, right? He wants it willingly, willing from his heart. He's not going to go take stuff from people. He wants them to willingly give it so they take part in what he's building. Also realizing that as they're willingly giving it, you can't later be like, God, you took that from me. No, you willingly gave it to me. And he says that you shall take my offering, right? All of that stuff is mine. I'm providing it all to you, and you're going to take that offering, not as your own to build, not as your own. The tabernacle is not yours. It is my house to dwell in. And he says, in this offering, which you shall take from them, gold, silver, bronze, right? He starts off with the big ones, the gold and silver and bronze. Can you imagine the Lord, he comes today and he goes, hey, give me all your money, give me your bank account, give me your cars, give me your house, give me everything that's of value, right? Those are humanly valuable things. They also, they all represent something a little different, but he says blue, purple, and scarlet thread. He's very specific about the colors. You know what's interesting about the tabernacle is when you look at it, maybe it's just me. I'm sort of vain about it, but I'm like, it's not really pretty. It's not really awesome looking or anything. It's like all those colors kind of clash together. They don't really fit into a theme. What was the color scheme you were going for? Let me spruce this up. My web guy, marketing guy. But God has a purpose for all of these things. So he says, I want you to bring the gold, the silver, and the bronze. He's going to outline, the entire tabernacle piece in gold. And then the silver has a cool representative. We'll get to that. Bronze. And then he says blue, purple, and scarlet thread. So I've made a bunch of notes. In proportion, it says that the finished tabernacle itself, when this thing was done, the present day value would be somewhere around $13 million. So my guess is with the cost of gold right now, you could probably double that cost. I think gold's like $5,000 an ounce right now, $5,500 an ounce. I remember when it hit 1,800 and I'm like, Sheena, get all your jewelry and melt it down. Let's take it in, let's melt it down, let's sell it all. She's like, what? And it's weird because she had needed like a necklace or a ring repaired. And we're like, well, if we bring you gold and we don't have to buy it, well, it'd be cheaper. And I was like, yeah, a little bit. They don't give you junk for that. They're like, you're still going to pay some money. So it'd probably be around at a $13 million a place. And that's just the tabernacle, right? The courtyard and all that stuff's a little different. But the combined weight of it to pick this thing up and dismantle and carry it, right? It was around 19,000 pounds. So 19,000 pounds of material that they're going to move because the tabernacle is not the permanent temple. It is a movable object that as the nation travels around, they're going to dismantle and carry, and then they're going to put it back together, and then they're going to dismantle and move it around. So the blue dye, this was likely extracted from shellfish. So the blue, he says, bring blue, purple, and scarlet dyes. Purple dye, this probably came from what they called a murex snail. It was a purple reddish color, so they would harvest this dye. The scarlet dye, this color would likely come from dried and powdered eggs and the bodies of a particular worm. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. You can look it up. It attaches itself to the holly plant. So these offerings they're making and providing to it. So he says the blue, purple, and scarlet thread, fine linen. This term would translate as an Egyptian word. The Egyptians knew and undoubtedly taught the Jews how to make fine linen. The Egyptians were very much into materials and looking a certain way. So this fine linen would be provided for the tabernacle. It says in goat's hair. Real obvious where the goat hair would come from goats. But it would be a special kind of goat. It's not like, sometimes you see goats and they have weird short hair. And this would be like a long-haired goat, right? So that would be something to harvest from them. Be more similar, it says, it'd probably be typically black, probably coarse, similar to a modern kind of felt material. These cool stats are David Guzik, so I can't take credit for them. Ram skins dyed red, badger skins. So I was like, who in the world is going to go get badger skins? You've never seen one of those things, like watch a video of a badger, man. They're the gnarliest, meanest little things. It actually doesn't translate well. What this actually would be, in some ways it's probably even worse, but it'd be like a dolphin or a manatee or a porpoise. So like a waterproof shell. So, killing dolphins not allowed today, but if God tells you to go do something. So as that translates, it would be like a sea cow. And manatees are interesting, right? Because they have like a pretty thick skin and they're covered in like a hair material. I like dolphins. Like, as the old joke is, I like dolphins with a little bit of mayonnaise on some bread. It was the whole thing. The dolphins were in tuna fish. Like, that was a whole crazy thing. I mean, I grew up eating tuna fish. And not like white tuna fish. It was like the dark tuna fish. It was kind of greasy and yeah, I don't know. And then the last thing is acacia wood, which would be real common in Egypt, this wood. It's harder and darker than oak. If you've seen oak or used oak, it's a very hard wood. It would be a good wood to use for this, not only in its strength, but because of its durability and how hard it was, bugs wouldn't really mess with it. So there's not a chance where they're going to be cutting logs or cutting pieces of wood and it'd be sort of rotted. And it says the acacia is known to have been plentiful in Egypt, and it abounds in the Arabia desert, the very place at which Moses was when he built the tabernacle, and hence it is reasonable to suppose that it was that he built it out of that wood, which was was every way proper for its purpose. That was Adam Clark. That quote from him. And then we have oil from the light. Would have likely been like an olive oil, a type of olive oil that would keep the candlestick that we're going to talk about burning. Spices for the anointing oil and for the sweet incense, onyx stones and stones to be set in the ephod and in the breastplate. We'll get into that next week, likely. Again, that thing would be, I don't know if you, like growing up, you get like catalogs in the mail or like there'd be a flyer inside of like the newspaper or whatever. And it would generally be something that you could fill out the bottom and tear it off and mail it back. And it was like a product you would buy. And I remember like years and years ago when I was a kid, I was like, you would be like, I don't know, a rose or some kind of like pendant, but it would have jewels of every color. And the point is that you'd put the birthstones of like your children, what month they were born, the birthstones, and then they would send you this, pendant for your mom for Mother's Day or for Christmas, and it would have all of your birthstones. And I could always remember looking at it, and I'm like, that is the ugliest thing I've ever seen, because it's like just this mishmash of stones, because they're all they're all different colors, and you're like, that is not even. Again, it's like, I don't know. I'm not aesthetically pleased by this. Why would my mom want that? Mine is November, so it's yellow. The ephod that's kind of how I picture it in my head. It's this breastplate, and there's just all kinds of colored stones on it. And you're like, man, I'm glad that God picks these things out, because he has purposes behind everything. And I remember our first time studying through, I looked at every stone. I looked at what every stone was supposed to mean. We probably won't go into that kind of detail. So this breastplate, we'll talk about it, but it will be reserved for the high priest. And it says, and let them make me a sanctuary. I have to stop for a second and say sanctuary, because me and Sheena have had this conversation many times about, she's like, we'll send people into the sanctuary. And I'm like, no, it's not called that. Call it something else. Call it a chapel. That's where Calvary Chapel. And she'd be like, okay. And then she'd be like, hey, we're going to meet in the sanctuary. And I was like, no, chapel. And she's like, I like the word sanctuary. She's not here. She might be listening, but sanctuary, it says my sanctuary. And I can't help but the fact that word is in here. I look it up and it says it means holy place or a place set apart. And everything about the tabernacle was holy. The same word is used in 1st and 2nd Chronicles to refer to the temple. It's not an incorrect word to use for the chapel. It's reserved for what? It's reserved for worship of God, for the teaching of God's word. We don't we did New Year's Eve here, and it was really awesome, but we didn't like watch TV in here. We were out in the fellowship hall. We watched, a movie, played some games. Because I want to keep this room separate for God, which is really called the sanctuary. We'll call it the Holy of Holies. That's where God dwells. But so, she's not here, but I'll tell her that hey, look, there was a legit thing. And God says you're going to let them make me a sanctuary. Let them make me. God could do all of this, right? They could wake up tomorrow and have this whole tabernacle built. God could have done it. But they're taking part in building a place for God. And, many times I reflected on this when we're doing this stuff. It's like, it's not perfect. And I get so worked up about how things look or if it's not right, and it irks me. It's because I'm trying to make the perfect place for you guys. I can see why people get stuck in the building aspect of things, because I want it to be a place where we all dwell together and it's comfortable. And then it's like, well, people might not like a black ceiling or a black wall. And I'm like, oh, well, I like it. And it was like, well, who are you making it for? And it was like, me. It's not really making it for me, right? It's like, Lord, what do you want me to do? Lord, it's your room. And I can remember praying, and the Lord's like, this is your opportunity to make something for your church, the church that, God has blessed us with. Not me, it's not mine. But I want it to be a place of refuge, right? A place where God meets with us. He's going to go to you with your house and go to you with your house and me at my house. He's everywhere. But this place was a place set apart. And he says to them, let them make me a sanctuary, a place where I will come and I will dwell. According to all that I show you, that is, the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all the furnishings, just so you shall make it, right? Make it exactly the way that I say. So God said, do the dark ceiling and do the dark wall. If it stinks. I remember one night, Adam and I were in here, I was working on something else, and he's like, I'm going to paint the ceiling tonight. And I was like, all right, let's go ahead. And he's, cracks open the paint, mixes in the glitter that you can't see. You can see it really here, but, metallic. And he starts painting. It was silver metallic to represent silver. In 10, it says, and they shall make an ark of acacia wood. 2.5 cubits shall be its length. So as we move forward, think about a cubit is between 18 and 21 or 22 inches. It's generally from the tip of your elbow to the tip of your middle finger on an average. So I measured mine generally between the tip of your pinky and your thumb on an average hand is 9 inches. So I was like, I've got a 20 to 21 inch span. So you're somewhere roughly in that. When he says cubits, so you're going to make an ark out of acacia wood. This ark is, let me look at my notes before I run ahead. This ark is not the boat. It is the same word, but a different meaning. So the word we translate here as ark is different. There are 2 Hebrew words. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce them. You can study them up. But the ark that Noah built was a box and a boat to float, right? It was to withstand water. This will withstand water, but this is more like a chest or a cupboard, a place to store things in. And so this ark was the most important single item associated with this entire project, right? And he starts with this. He says, you're going to build this ark of acacia wood. 2.5 cubits shall be its length. I was trying to figure out, let's see what this is. So it's pretty big, right? Be a pretty big chest. Yeah, pretty much, actually, right? Almost my wingspan, yeah. A cubit and a half of its width, and a cubit and a half its height. And you shall overlay it with pure gold, right? It's not just any gold. And what I was thinking about the necklace thing, right? How expensive gold is. That's not always real gold. It's overlaid with silver. It's not pure gold. Pure gold would be a fortune. When we were in Florida, in the evening, we'd watch TV, and my dad had one night or two, we watched some of these gold digger guys. They have these, they just go in massive construction vehicles, and they're just digging tons of earth and moving it and dumping it into these things to get gold. And at the end of a week or whatever, they go in and they measure how much gold. They're moving the town of Corinth times 5, and they get these little small things of it. But, they get 5, 10, 20 ounces of it at $5,000, right? Sometimes they're hundreds of thousands of dollars of what they do. Well, God's saying this whole ark is going to be built out of wood, and then you're going to layer the entire thing of pure gold. So this gold, if they had it would need to be refined, all the impurities taken out of it. There's work just in this thing alone. And really, how perfect should it be for God? Absolutely stunningly perfect. Right? God is worthy of that. So you overlay it with pure gold, inside and out you shall overlay it, and you shall make it on a molding of gold all around. So it's going to sit on this plate of gold. Can't wait to I can probably look at the book and see what it's going to look like, but I kind of can't wait to see what it looks like. I hope this thing's accurate, and I don't have to email them and go, you guys, it's not really accurate. They seem like good Bible guys, and the tomb was really neat. You shall cast 4 rings of gold for it and put them in each of the 4 corners. So we've got this box built on each of the 4 corners, lower or upper. I'm assuming upper. That would balance the weight. But these rings are going to be affixed to it because it's going to be how this ark is moved. You shall put them on its 4 corners. 2 rings shall be on one side and 2 rings on the other side. And you shall make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. So now, again, just the amount of gold that would be put into this and the amount of work that it would take and the talent that it would take, the people of Israel, because, 1 million plus people traveling around, you've got tribes of people that are good at doing this stuff, right? So they're putting in using their gifts to make this. So they make these long poles, and then they overlay those in gold. And it says in 14, you shall put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark, that the ark might be carried by them. The poles shall be in the rings of the ark. They shall never be taken from it. Not be taken from it. And you shall put into the ark the testimony which I will give you. So this a very specific set of instructions here, right? You put the poles in, and you never take them out. It doesn't say never, but God says don't do something unless he changes his mind. I'll read it as never, but don't take them out. This is how it will be moved, right? Because the rules are going to be that you don't touch the rest of the ark. No one has to touch it, and it's, I noted it down. Can't remember. It was, 2 Samuel 6, verses 6 and 7. Uzzah touched the ark to keep it from falling off of a cart while they were moving it, but he did not touch it at the poles, and God struck him dead instantly. Uzzah was wrong in his thinking that God would let the ark be damaged. This is God's thing, right? And so he's going, I'm going to help God out by grabbing this ark. It says, in fact, it did not fall off the cart, and no thanks to Uzzah. Uzzah was also wrong in his thinking that there was something less pure about the ground than in its act of pure disobedience, right? So he's going, wow, look, I'm going to disobey what God said because I think I'm going to make good out of this. And when he touched the ark, he died instantly. Right? And God says something, he means it that way. And I was thinking about it like, where is the ark? And if they find it, how do they move it? Is it still got the poles in it? But anyway, I'll end up ranting off. We got a lot to cover. But in any case, and then he says, inside of this ark is going to be important. You're going to put the testimony that I will give you, which, ultimately there's going to be a few objects in here, but the testimony that he's going to give, this testament, is the 10 commandments, right? God's law. He says, you shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2.5 cubits shall be its length, and 1.5 cubits its width. So it's going to sit on top of the covering. That's going to sit on top of this, and a seat on top of that. He says, and you shall make 2 cherubim of gold. Of hammered work, you shall make them at the 2 ends of the mercy seat, right? So they're going to make and mold these in gold and hammer them. And they're going to mold these cherubim, angels, on each side of the box. He says, make 1 cherubim at one end and the other cherubim at the other end. And you shall make the cherubim at the 2 ends of it of one piece with the mercy seat. So it's one massive piece. And the cherubim shall stretch out their wings above, covering the mercy seat with their wings, and they shall face one another. And the faces of the cherubim shall be toward the mercy seat. You shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony that I will give you. And there I will meet with you, and I will speak with you from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubim, which are on the ark of the testimony, about everything which I will give you in commandment to the children of Israel. So this ark is going to contain the law. It's going to be built for God. On top of it is going to be two angels. They're going to be looking at each other, and a mercy seat where God will come into the temple and dwell. So he says, you shall also make a table of acacia wood. 2 cubits shall be its length. So it's just shy of the size of the Ark of the Covenant, lengthwise. A cubit in its width, a cubit and a cubit and a half its height. And you shall overlay that with pure gold and make a molding of gold all around. You shall make for it a frame of a handbreadth all around, and you shall make a gold molding for the frame all around. And you shall make for it 4 rings of gold, and put the rings on the 4 corners that are its 4 legs. The rings shall be close to the frame as the holders, as holders for the poles to bear the table. And you shall make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold, that the table may be carried with them. You shall make its dishes, its pans, its pitchers, its bowls for pouring. You shall make them of pure gold. You shall set the showbread on the table before me always. There'll be more explanation, obviously, as we go on those things. But so inside, along with this ark, is going to have a table for showbread. Again, pure gold. It's going to be carried by poles. You know, it's what's interesting on this is when we look at it, what we really see is the perfection that we have to approach God with. So perfect that we can't even touch the items that he says don't touch, that they have to be carried by some other object. You shall also make a lampstand of pure gold. The lampstand shall be of hammered work. Its shaft, its branches, its bowls, its ornamental knobs, and flowers shall be of one piece. And 6 branches shall come out of its sides, 3 branches of the lampstand out of one side, and 3 branches of the lampstand out of the other side. 3 bowls shall be made like almond blossoms on the one branch, and with an ornamental knob and a flower, and 3 bowls made like almond blossoms on the other branch, with an ornamental knob and a flower. And so for the 6 branches that come out of the lampstand, on the lampstand itself, 4 bowls shall be made like almond blossoms, each with an ornamental knob and a flower. And there shall be a knob under the first 2 branches of the same, a knob under the second 2 branches of the same, and a knob under the third 2 branches of the same, according to the 6 branches that extend from the lampstand. Their knobs and their branches shall be of one piece. All of it shall be one hammered piece, right? So they're going to be put together by a master goldsmith. Their knobs and their branches shall be of one piece. You shall make 7 lamps for it, and they shall arrange its lamp, and they shall arrange its lamps so that they give light in front of it. And its wick trimmers and their trays shall be of pure gold. It shall be made of a talent of pure gold with all these utensils. And see with all these utensils. And see to it that you make them according to the pattern in which was shown you on the mountain. Right? So again, a picture that God gave of this. Really what it will look like ultimately is like an almond tree. You know, it's branching out. We know it as a menorah, right? That's, you know, it's funny. I was thinking about like old Christmas decorations. You know, we take out like stuff for Christmas. When I was growing up, we had one with blue lights on it. And I don't even know why we would have had it. We're not Jewish. It was just like a Christmas decoration, and it came from a yard sale or somebody gave it. You know, someone would we would sit in the front window. This is the master of menorahs of all, right? All one piece this thing would be. It probably weighs 70 or 80 pounds. It's pure gold, and it's going to all be really fastened out of one thing. And when we look at it, it'll look like a tree with its branches coming out, 7 across the top. 7 candles. And it will light this room that it's going to be in, which is going to be gold all over the walls, right? So it's not going to need much when it comes to light. And moreover, he says in 26, verse 1, moreover, you shall make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine woven linen and blue, purple, and scarlet thread. With artistic designs of cherubim, you shall weave them. The length of each curtain shall be 28 cubits. Man, 28 cubits, like 6 feet long. Somewhere in that ballpark, right? My math is right. The width of each curtain, 4 cubits. And every one of these curtains shall have the same measurements. 5 curtains shall be coupled to one another, and the other 5 curtains shall be coupled to one another. And you shall make loops of blue yarn on the edge of the curtain, on the selvage of one set, and likewise you will do that on the outer edge of the other curtain on the second set. 50 loops you shall make in one curtain, and 50 loops you shall make on the edge of the curtain that is on the end of the second set. That loops may be clasped to one another. Awful example, but think about like a shower curtain, right? But sideways, right? These clasps are going to hold around the curtain. So they're going to stitch together, and then they're going to be clasps made of gold to hang and cover up. And I mean, the weight of these things would be pretty immense. You know, five of them all built together, 6 feet long. He says, you shall make the curtains of goat's hair. 50 clasps, in verse 6, 50 clasps of gold, and couple the curtains together with the clasp so that they may be one tabernacle. Excuse me. And you shall also make curtains of goat's hair to be a tent over the tabernacle. Right? So the tabernacle going to have this massive building, massive walls of curtains put together, and then it's going to have this sort of draped over the outside of this goat's hair tent, basically like I don't know if you go camping. Sometimes you put up a tent and then you put a tarp over the top of it because it keeps the extra water and it runs off. So as you're going to build that, you shall make 11 curtains. The length of each curtain shall be 30 cubits, and the width of each curtain 4 cubits, and the 11 curtains shall have the same measurements. And you shall couple 5 curtains by themselves and 6 curtains by themselves. And then you shall double over the 6th curtain at the forefront of the tent. You shall make 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that is the outermost in one set, and 50 loops on the edge of the curtain of the second set. And you shall make 50 bronze clasps and put the clasps together into the loops and couple the tent together that it may be one, right? One big piece. So just think too, again, when you're dismantling this thing and carrying it, the weight that is being moved. It's not 2 guys' jobs. Like, hey, we're going to dismantle and we're going to leave. You got like 20 minutes, pull this thing down and move it. It's a whole collective, thing that needs to be brought apart, brought down and set in sections to go get set up again. And it needs to be done every time the same way. You shall make 50 loops on the edge of the curtain. Oh, sorry, we were in verse 12. The remnant that remains of the curtains of the tent, the half curtain that remains, shall hang over the back of the tabernacle. And a cubit on one side and a cubit on the other side of what remains of the length of the curtains of the tent shall hang over the sides of the tabernacle, on this side and on that side to cover it. You shall also make a covering of ram skins dyed red for the tent, and a covering of badger skins above that. And for the tabernacle you shall make the boards of acacia wood standing upright. 10 cubits shall be the length of the board, and a cubit and a half shall be the width of each board. 2 tenons shall be at each board for the binding to one another. How do you guys understand what a tenon is? Right? You'd have a mortise and tenon. One side would have a piece cut out of it, and the other side there would be a piece long, so when it pulled together, they're not just sitting side by side, they're fastened inside of each other. It says you shall make you shall make 40 sockets of silver under the 20 boards, 2 sockets under each board for its 2 tenons. In the second side of the tabernacle, on the north side, there shall be 20 boards and 40 sockets of silver, 2 sockets under each of the boards. For the far side of the tabernacle, westward, and there's a whole setup of how this will set up, how this tabernacle sits, which we will get to eventually as well. You shall make 2 boards in the 2 back corners of the tabernacle, and they shall be coupled together at the bottom, and they shall be coupled together at the top by one. Thus it shall be for both of them. They shall be for They shall be for the 2 corners. So there shall be 8 boards with their sockets of silver, 16 sockets, 2 sockets under each of the boards. Anybody confused yet? How this? Yeah, I really we should have pictures of it, it's probably best. But ultimately, we've built the ark, we've built the table, the lampstand, and then now he's building a box, the tabernacle itself, around all of this. The footing of this is built in silver. So the tabernacle doesn't sit on the ground. The wood of the walls and the curtains, the wood of the walls and the sides of it aren't sitting on the ground. They're actually sitting on a footing of silver, which actually had an interesting note. It says, silver is the metal associated with redemption and payment for sin. Jesus was betrayed for silver, and the tabernacle's foundation was silver, pointing to the redeeming work of Christ. So think about a building, right, like this room. All the walls can be pulled apart, but they have tenons on the top and the bottom to sit in these footings, so they're sitting as sections. And then the walls are covered in curtain, these massive curtains. So ultimately, when it is enclosed, there'll be 2 rooms inside of it, but there'll also be this big sort of tent over the top of it. Well, so there's been talk about that history might show that the walls were actually solid, but the way it's described as the boards are put together, it doesn't seem that way. But ultimately, if you can see, how they have it here, at least, and we'll see, but this, let's try this side. It's probably not the best accurate picture, but ultimately, this is the tabernacle itself, right? There's a courtyard, and there'll be walls around that to close things off, but ultimately, these are the big curtains that they've pulled together, the acacia boards, and then this sort of wrapping that goes over the top of it. So what God is ultimately building is a place where he will dwell inside of this tabernacle, but a room outside of that tabernacle where the priests will go in and out of, and then only one priest can enter the Holy of Holies one time a year for the remission of sins. So ultimately, you're going to have this big courtyard and this long building, this goat skin stretched over, and then these curtains that are draped out over the tabernacle. Reading up on it, let's see if I don't know if I put it in here or not. It says that likely the tabernacle's walls were solid and the inside of it were layered in gold. So it's possible that each wall was its own section because he's going to layer the entire thing in gold on the inside. So they could have been moving the walls. So as he's putting all of this together, ultimately he's giving him instructions, which, reading it, I wouldn't have any idea how to put this together, right? I can take what I get out of it, which is why, to me, God showed him this picture somehow, right? Either I gave him a picture of it in his head or drew it out on a tablet for him and was like, hey, this is what you're going to build, which is why Moses would really ultimately need to be overseeing some of how it's built, because he's the one that's been with God and seen this tabernacle and sanctuary where God will dwell. In 26 it says, and you shall make bars of acacia wood, 5 for the boards on the one side of the tabernacle, 5 for the boards on the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the boards on the side of the tabernacle and for the far side, westward. The middle bar shall pass through the midst of the boards from end to end. You shall overlay the boards with gold, make their rings of gold as holders for their bars, and overlay the bars with gold. So that kind of builds this long wall put together with a board in it to hold it for, to keep it as one section, and then overlaying the entire thing with gold. And then God never once does he really say, put strips of gold. All gold was done in one big section. The amount of material this thing was going to take. You shall overlay the boards with gold, make their rings as gold as holders for the bars, and overlay the bars with gold. And you shall raise up the tabernacle according to its pattern which you were shown on the mountain. You shall make a veil woven of blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and fine woven linen. And it shall be woven with an artistic design of cherubim. You shall hang it upon the 4 pillars of acacia wood, overlaid with gold. Their hooks shall be gold upon 4 sockets of silver. And you shall hang the veil from the clasps. Then you shall bring the ark of the testimony in there behind the veil. Right? So he's making this first room. So you've got this box built. It's put up in a certain order. And inside, the room, which we would call the holy place, is where the lampstand will be, where incense is going to be burned, where the showbread he's talking about will be offered up. And then inside of there's a veil, and this big, massive veil is what keeps everybody out from where the Ark of the Covenant is going to be, where God ultimately will come in. And he's going to have, obviously, rules around all of these things, how these things will work, but it says, you shall bring it upon the 4 pillars of acacia wood overlaid with gold. Their hooks shall be gold upon 4 sockets of silver. And you shall hang the veil from its clasps. Then you shall bring the ark of the testimony in there behind the veil. The veil shall be a divider for you between the holy place and the most holy. So Holy of Holies is what it's often referred to as in this place where God dwells. No man can go. Right? No ordinary man, a priest, but the high priest. He can go once a year to go in for the remission of sins for the people. The veil shall be the divider between you, between the holy place and the most holy place. You shall put the mercy seat upon the ark of the testimony in the most holy. You shall set the table outside the veil and the lampstand across from the table on the side of the tabernacle toward the south, and you shall put the table on the north side. You shall make a screen for that door of the tabernacle, woven of blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and fine woven linen, made by a weaver. And you shall make for the screen 5 pillars of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold. Their hooks shall be of gold, and you shall cast 5 sockets of bronze for them. That's a lot, and we'll stop sort of there. Some other notes that I had on this. So this tabernacle is not going to sit on the ground. The footing of it is silver, so that gold is not touching the ground. And in many ways, how symbolic that is, right? That it says perhaps that the dual nature of the foundation has to do with the 2 sources of revelation, the Old and New Testaments. Possibly, the silver redemption also separated the tabernacle from the dirt of the desert floor. Possibly an illustration of the truth that Jesus' redeeming work separates us from the world. There's all kinds of cool stuff about, what God was likely doing and all that, but gold really is that's the cream of the crop when it comes to what we see. Gold is the ultimate material, but it's soft, right? It's actually really quite soft. So it's pliable. It can be moved and molded. The veil was a barrier, and no priest could go beyond the veil into the most holy place except the high priest. He could only enter once a year, and that was on the Day of Atonement. Spiritually speaking, in dying for our sins, Jesus, with his own blood, he entered the most holy place of all, having obtained eternal redemption. And the cool part is what we celebrate as the day he, hung on the cross, is ultimately that when he gave up his spirit and said it is finished, that veil in the temple tore in 2, and not from the bottom up, but from the top down. 2 reasons that I really find fascinating, right? One is it shows no man could ever do that. No man could reach to the top and rip that thing in 2. And secondarily, when a sign of grief was for a person to rip their clothes, right? They would grab it at the top and they would rip them open. And that was, clothes weren't like they were made, they were very expensive. To me, it also shows this sort of dual thing that happens, right? That the work of what Jesus did on the cross and the shedding of his blood was the blood that would be sprinkled all over this tabernacle. And ultimately, he would boldly go in where his Father was, tear that veil apart, and open it up for me and you to go fellowship with God. And I think it's also cool because maybe I'm wrong, but I also believe it to be a sign of the Lord's. You're good. Also believe it to be a sign of the Father's grief that his Son has died. Right? That was him going, right? And I'm done. But the greatest news of all is that opens up that opens up a pathway for us to go. There is no real mediator any longer, right? We have a great high priest, but that high priest opened up the pathway that we can go directly to God. In the temple, this veil was torn from top to bottom at the death of Jesus, showing that through his death, there is no longer a barrier to the most holy place. Now that the most holy place is open to us, coming out of the Hebrews, it says, "Brethren, having boldness to enter the holiest by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way, which he consecrated for us through the veil, that is his flesh." The torn veil that was in Matthew, it also symbolizes the broken body, which is not broken, right? The crushed body of Jesus, not broken, through which we have access to the most holy place. So ultimately, God is putting up barriers for everything to be done in an orderly fashion. Me and you, if we were Israelites, we wouldn't even be entering. We would never enter that place. The courtyard itself, when we talk about that next week and how it's built, that would be where the sacrifices would occur, where the priests would do their work. And there'd be priests that would go in and out of the holy place because the lampstand needs to be continually running. That is the light. There is bread that will be replaced and incense that will be burning, which really sort of represents the prayers of the people to God. God says that our prayers to him are like a sweet-smelling incense that he receives. And then, the priest himself, we'll talk about his garments and the things that he had and cover, 28 and 27 and 28, maybe some of 29. Now that I think about it, I forgot about chapter 30, the bronze laver and things that'll be on the outside. That's all right. We'll burn. We can get through 3 next week. Do you want to do more, or do you want to stop? Okay, do you put everything put away? You can still open? Let's continue on just a little bit. We won't finish all of 28, but then we'll get halfway through. Maybe we'll finish it all. Let's go for a few more minutes. So, sorry, not 28, 27. 26, 27, yeah. So we have now the temple or the tabernacle itself is built. In 27:1, he says, "You shall make an altar of acacia wood, 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. The altar shall be square, and its height shall be 3 cubits. You shall make its horns on its 4 corners. Its horns shall be of one piece with it. And you shall overlay it with bronze. And you shall make its pans to receive its ashes, and its shovels, and its basins, and its forks, and its fire pans. You shall make all of its utensils of bronze. You shall make a grate for it, a network of bronze, and on the network you shall make 4 bronze rings at its 4 corners. And you shall put it under the rim of the altar beneath, that the network may be midway up the altar." This is complicated stuff. And you shall make poles for the altar, and poles for the poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with bronze. And the poles shall be put into the rings, and the poles shall be on the 2 sides of the altar to bear it. You shall make it hollow with boards, and as it is shown to you on the mountain, you shall make it. So we have this altar that's here of the burnt offerings. And he says in 9, you shall make the court of the tabernacle. For the south side there shall be hangings for the court, made of fine woven linen, 100 cubits long for one side, and its 20 pillars, and their 20 sockets shall be of bronze. The hooks of the pillars and their bronze shall be silver. Likewise, along the length of the north side, there shall be hangings 100 cubits long, and its 20 pillars, and their 20 sockets of bronze, and the hooks of the pillars, and their bands of silver. And along the width of the court on the west shall be hangings of 50 cubits. So what he's described is 2 long sides of this tabernacle. He's talking about this section, right? 100 cubits, and building these outside walls. And the north, 20 pillars along the width of the court. On the west wall shall be hangings of 50 cubits, and then there are 10 pillars and their 10 sockets. The width of the court on the east side shall be 50 cubits. The hangings on the one side of the gate shall be 50 cubits. And just as we're reading this, thinking about when the tabernacle is constructed and moved and constructed, it is constructed in a certain way, right? So when he says like the east wall, the west wall, it is going to face certain directions every single time. So as he showed Moses this, when they go set up and they build it, it is going to, the doorway is going to be facing the east, right? So the sun will be rising on it, and then on the west it'll be, it's actually really cool when we see how the people are going to camp around it. It's actually going to be a big cross if you looked at it from the sky and the way that it's done. So when he's saying, referencing north and west and east at walls, he's obviously showed Moses, look, this is how it's going to be placed. These are the directions that you'll know. And when you put together, these are how I'm referencing these walls. In some ways, when I read these things, I think about like boats. When people say the starboard side or whatever, I don't know what they're talking about. And that's like the left or the right, I don't know. But those are perfectly placed or said because they mean something regardless of the direction you're facing. Because if I'm looking at the front of the boat and I say it's on the left or the right, and the person standing there looking at me and go, it's on the left. I'd be like, wait, your left or my left? Right? It's similar to that. So when he's saying it to Moses, he's instructing him in this way so that he understands when he has this picture in his head of how it's set up. It's like going, hey, if we're standing in the sound booth, can you go plug that on the left? Like my left or stage left, right? Because stage left is here, but my left would be over here. So he's giving him those sorts of instructions that when you're looking at the west side or the southern side or the north side. He says in 14, the hangings on the one side of the gate shall be 15 cubits with their 3 pillars and their 3 sockets. And on the other side, there shall be hanging of 15 cubits with their 3 pillars and their 3 sockets. In 16, he says, for the gate of the court there shall be a screen 20 cubits long, woven of blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and fine woven linen made by a weaver. It shall have 4 pillars and 4 sockets, and the pillars around the court shall have bands of silver. Their hooks shall be of silver, and their sockets of bronze. The length of the court shall be 100 cubits, with a width of 50 cubits throughout, or 50 throughout, he means cubits. And the height of 5 cubits, made of fine woven linen, and its sockets of bronze. All of the utensils of the tabernacle for the service, all of its pegs, all of the pegs of the court shall be of bronze. It's like, oh man, as he's doing this, right, everything that was inside of the tabernacle itself was all built out of gold. The things that are built outside of it that man would see is ultimately built out of bronze, the metalwork. The care of the lampstands, my section is called. This is in 20. And you shall command the children of Israel that they bring you pure oil of pressed olives for the light, to cause the lamp to burn continually. In the tabernacle of meeting, outside of the veil, which is before the testimony, Aaron and his sons shall tend to it from evening until morning before the Lord. It shall be a statute forever to their generations on behalf of the children of Israel. So he says this comes back around, right? This lampstand that after the covenant, we first started talking about that these cups on the top of this menorah lampstand are going to have oil in them, and they're going to be lit, and they're to be lit continually, not to go out. So ultimately, the priests will have to go in and out and check on them, and then fill the oil up as the oil burns down, so that the light doesn't go out. And he says that it shall be a statute forever to their generations, right? Their job, if you were born a Levi in the line of priests, which is what Paul was born in, right? And Matthew, the gospel writer Matthew, he was a Levite. Their job is to tend to the temple. That is their whole life's, I'd say goal, but it's not their goal, right? It's their life responsibility to do that.
Thank you for joining us today. We pray this teaching has been a blessing to you. If you have any questions or would like to request prayer, join us online at www.cccorinth.org. If you're local, come visit us for a service at 284 Main Street in Corinth, Maine. We want to remind you that the truth of God's Word never changes, so stand in it. Remain armored up, and until next time, grace and peace.